Hi, this is Trevor, and welcome back to our weekly tarot card video. Today is Wednesday, September the 2nd, 2015. It seems like the summer's just been flying by, and here we are on the verge of the long weekend. I'm going to be taking a little bit of time off in the next few days, but you can still call my booking line to book an appointment with me when I return. And that number is on my website, and that link is always included underneath these videos. That's at trevorsense.com. That's also where you'll find all of these tarot videos in a table of contents order. As you can see, I'm coming to you from a slightly different location right now. I'm coming to you from my home today, a little bit of R&R. And you can see the paintings in my studio are actually by my older brother Daniel. And this is one of his works that I'm so pleased to have in my home. But without further ado, let's get into our card of the week. I have only a few cards that are left in the deck, and I've chosen this week's card. It is the Eight of Swords. Now, again, I always like to kind of recap. I like to look at the relationship of the numbers together, what they sort of have in common. So we could look at all of the eights and see something. And then I like to look at and kind of compare that to things like the system of the Kabbalah, what the eighth sphere or Sephiroth would be saying. And then there is the very traditional layout, the layout of 10 cards that is known as the Celtic cross layout. And position 8, of course following position 7, is oftentimes our relationship with our environment. Sevens are the action we take where we cannot fully know the consequences. And eights are a little like the reaction that's going on, how that's interacting with our environment. So eights are kind of like a checking point, really kind of like a sense of saying, here's where you are in relation to that flow of energy. They are sort of like that sign in the mall that says, you are here. But we can make a bit of a mistake sometimes in over-identifying with that. When we let our circumstances become our identity, when we let, what's happening, say, with our work or with our relationships define us. Think of it this way. When you go to a party or a gathering and people kind of want to know what we're about, we oftentimes talk about our circumstances. And they are things that we're traveling through. But the trick is really to be in it, but not of it. So if we're identifying with our emotional searching, that's the Eight of Cups, that sense of longing, that sense of looking for fulfillment, where we are on that journey. And the Eight of Wands, where we have the four wands, or the 8 wands flying through the air, that's like busy, 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 busy. And the Eight of Pentacles, which we'll come to, it's one of the cards that we haven't covered yet, is rather interesting. But this is the Eight of Swords. So we're defining ourselves in relation to our conflicts. And that can be very challenging stuff. We see on the card, again, we look at Pamela Coleman-Smith's illustration in the Rider-Waite deck, and she knew what she was doing. She was a tremendous illustrator of stories. We see this woman in red, and that comes up a few times in the deck. The Queen of Pentacles is in red. There's a woman in red in the Three of Cups, and here again in the Eight of Swords. A woman in red, and that suggests a woman who's got the potential of really being in touch with her power. And that could be threatening to some people. And she's all bound up and she's wearing a blindfold. It almost looks like an execution that's going on. And she's been left on the beach. And we see the castle high on the hill. And we can see the little pools of water. So that suggests that the tide has gone out. And I like to think, if we were telling a story, that this was a woman very powerful, and they didn't have the guts to actually kill her. They've left her bound and surrounded by these swords on the beach, and waiting for the tide to come in, and waiting for the tide to do the job. Well, in how I see that fairy tale, that tide is the very thing that could set her free. And water in the cards, well, it can relate to the emotions, powerful emotional energies, and we can also see the great water as a reference point, oftentimes kind of referring to venturing into the unknown, leaving behind our familiar ground. So in order for her to be freed, there is a tremendous release of emotion that is going to go on. There is a tremendous sense of having to step outside of habitual patterns and to be making a change. Now, over the years, I've seen this card coming up for remarkably sensitive people, oftentimes caretakers, people who are so immersed in being caring towards other people that their own butt could be on fire and they don't know it till they smell the smoke. Now, I've learned that sometimes in my own difficult experience, that we can be carrying a tremendous amount of stress and focus on one thing in particular and not being in touch with the emotions or the feelings on another level. So there is the potential to free oneself. And when that happens, that can be a little scary. Sometimes when we haven't been working with those emotions, they can be a little bit over the top. But as we work through them, we gain that sense of freedom. We move beyond the 8, because after all, it's not the outcome. It is not the culmination of things. It is simply where we are. So when we find ourselves caught up in conditions and distractions, when we find that we are blindfolded to the immediate environment around us because we're so preoccupied with worry, maybe about someone else or maybe about a situation that's coming up, we can learn to drop that. We can learn to be present in the moment, to remove the blindfold, to recognize the feelings and emotions that are present beneath the surface. An author I've found very helpful with that is Pema Chodron. And she writes and lectures a great deal about meditation and mindfulness and being able to drop the story and pay attention to what's there beneath the surface. So there's really, really helpful tools. One of the beautiful things about tarot is that there are these 78 cards that we can all relate to. So whatever we're moving through, others have been there before, and we can have experience that can be helpful to those who will come after. So here's wishing everyone the opportunity for freedom, the ability to pause, to listen, sometimes to the wisdom of our physical body. Sometimes I call this the flannel nightie card. It may be time to stand back, to take some space, to pause in relation to some relationships, to make sure we're connected with ourselves before we kind of engage in that sense of taking on things with others. That's what I'm doing this weekend, taking a little R&R, a little time away, and looking forward to sharing, and looking forward to seeing you again next week when you tune in for our Card of the Week video. Bye for now.